Hello to everyone and to the internet. It is currently Moon Day, January 21st. I am Nathan of Washington, and you are watching Young Globalist. This is the news. Alright everybody, so I've been referring to days of the week as like in their proper Norse form. Mostly just, these intros can get monotonous, so I don't get bored with it. You have no idea what it's like running a weekly news show, or a daily news show rather. Sometimes it can get a little monotonous, but if I didn't think it was important, I wouldn't be doing it. Alright, so Russia soon to replace Germany as the 5th largest of the global economy. In spite of Putin basically banning all Rothschild banks and being sanctioned by the US, they're somehow doing extremely well. It apparently has to do with the fact that Putin was able to pay off Russia's debt to the Rothschild family, and then he immediately kicked out all their banks. Something we have failed to do and should have done a long time ago. For the United States, it's already too late. But it wasn't too late for Russia. There are times when I truly admire Vladimir Putin's ability to just get shit done. Whatever else I think of the man, I have to admit, I really admire the fact that he just gets shit done. He is nothing if not a pragmatist. A quality I wish I honestly had, but But there's been a general rise in the Eastern economy as well. It's been underway for some time, which will probably result in a major shift in the top 10 economies. The top 10 countries will also include, in the coming weeks, there will still be Germany, Indonesia, Brazil, Turkey, and the UK will now be included. So, you should also expect to see China take the #1 spot pretty soon from the United States. They're growing, we're shrinking. We might sell more products and get more infrastructure, but China's generally more stable. Planned economies tend to have that advantage, unfortunately, although it comes at the price of violating the people's rights and sovereignty, as always. That's good old communism for you. But notice how these countries are improving all of a sudden. A lot of them are going in a very conservative direction of late, especially Brazil. So, I don't know, just maybe it's something to consider. A coincidence obviously doesn't necessarily mean anything. Correlation and causation not being the same thing. But either way, we get that Russia's improving, and so is the East. This will mostly be a good thing, but it could also then potentially be a bad thing as well. The Yellow Vest movement has been active for 10 weeks in a row. And traditional government in general tends to be very tyrannical. Traditional, that is, for the rest of the world. American tradition tends to be more, in the past have been smaller, less tyrannical government, although that's becoming less and less true all the time, as our currently liberal government is becoming bigger and bigger. And although Trump has been halting its growth to some extent. But a change in human politics worldwide needs large-scale implementation. Traditional government needs to go the way of the dodo, and we start figuring out a new, different way of looking at things. But the current status is that 80,000 officers countrywide in France, 5,000 in Paris, 10,000 yellow vests in the city of Toulouse as police cars rush in. 84,000 people have joined the Yellow Vest movement. Some are cops who initially supported them in the beginning and even chose the Yellow Vest symbol. Some people symbolize the dead activists by carrying cardboard coffins with them. Water cannons for crowd dispersion are regularly on display, but have not been used yet, but they're there to sort of intimidate. The Yellow Vest processions took place in Caen, Caen, and Rouen, both in northern France. The rallies were also held in Strasbourg. That sounds more German. It's not spelled in a Germanic way, though. Bordeaux, Toulon, Dijon, Béziers, Avignon, and among other places. Now, showing support for the Yellow Vests, being a non-French, therefore being an American, it's really just a show of support for my fellow man, who I believe they deserve better than what they've got, which is obvious abusive tyranny. No one should have to suffer under that. That's not right. So I show my support for the Yellow Vests in the humanitarian sense, that they deserve a government that isn't tyrannical and abusive. Like, yeah, they do a really good job of masking it, but when the police started really like cracking down very violently on the otherwise peaceful protests, or the fact that you make protests illegal, you're showing your true colors, my friend. You're showing them loud and proud. Decriminalizing marijuana is not enough. Legalizing it needs to happen. Bottom line is, no victim, no crime. Because police can arbitrarily enforce marijuana regulation, even when decriminalized, and that can and will often be fatal. Ever hear of Zachary Hammond? He was fatally shot by police in Seneca. Decriminalized there. That's South Carolina. He was trying to flee from an attempted marijuana bust, and they just shot him dead. When you run away like that, you don't just shoot them dead. Most cops aren't even allowed to shoot people dead unless they're physically threatened. But of course, they just get off with paid leave. In 2012, officers killed unarmed Bronx teenager Ramarley Graham as he tried to flush pot down the toilet. Something that is not illegal, yet they can still bust him for, because it's an illegal gray area, and that ended up costing him his life. Trevon Cole was doing the same thing when police killed him in Las Vegas in 2010 during a drug raid at which no weapons were found. Oh yay, killing yet another unarmed person. It's like, well, they'd still be alive if they weren't messing with marijuana, messing with the devil's lettuce. Yeah, well, them having marijuana does not absolve the officers from the responsibility of having fired the fatal shot. Think about that for a second. Bottom line is, the officers are responsible for these deaths and should be punished accordingly. They should be removed from service, their badges taken, and they should be placed under house arrest for a time. Putting them in prison is too dangerous because their cellmate might decide to murder them. Because they're cops. Cops usually get killed if they're sent to prison. That's usually what happens. And no amount of police training can save you from having to fight literally an entire gang of criminals all at once, without so much as a gun to help you. It's like, you're not Chuck Norris. You can't take on like 150 prisoners all at once, or 5 prisoners even. Might be enough. But I mean, marijuana possession is a victimless crime. No victim, no crime. The real crime here was the officers killing them. And they were the victims. Nastya Rybka, a Russian hooker, actually lied about a Russia-Trump connection to the Mueller probe to get out of jail. Yep. She was running a sex school in the eastern part of the world, in the eastern hemisphere, where doing such is technically illegal. It's more an illegal gray area here in the West, depending on what context the school is set up. But in the East, it is flatly illegal. And so to get her ass out of jail, by the way, her name apparently roughly translates to little fish. But, interesting. But, yeah, she lied to the Mueller probe because they have the power to get her out of jail. That just shows just how much legitimacy the Mueller probe really has. Which is basically none. Democrats claim that Trump leaked their commercial flight plans in an attempt as part of a scheme. They act like Trump is trying to get Nancy Pelosi killed. They straight up tried to say that he was trying to kill Nancy Pelosi. But of course there was no evidence that the leak ever really took place. It's a commercial flight. That information is publicly available usually, mostly for criminal justice purposes, or to find out when someone's coming to pay you a visit. This is literally garbage, okay? This is the best they can do to make it seem like Trump is the big bad enemy. Trust me, Nancy Pelosi's life is not likely to end anytime soon, unfortunately. Because she now apparently rejects Trump's shutdown deal. And she rejected it flatly before he even had a chance to announce it. What is she, a child? I mean, how old is she that she's acting like this? This deal would include legislative relief for all DACA recipients for 3 years. $800 million for urgent humanitarian assistance, $805 million to combat drug trafficking, and a 3-year extension for migrants with temporary protected status. And hire more immigration judges. You hear that, Pelosi? You said no to $800 million for humanitarian aid. You said no to $805 million to combat drug trafficking. You said there's not a single proposal in that bill that does not sound like a really wonderful thing. And you said no to all of it just because that dirty wall is in there. You are an amazing person, Nancy Pelosi. It is amazing how pathetic, bitter, distasteful, and just plain spiteful of a human being you are. You completely amaze me with the depths of how disappointing of a person you can be. You literally make me sick. Israel attacks Syria with F-16 planes, all shot down. Citing that Iranian operatives go through Syria and Iran wants to get rid of Israel. Syria denies that claim and basically says that Israel is just attacking Syria because they don't like Syria. And Russia is now a Syrian ally and stands by them. And hell, it's probably true. Netanyahu's Minister of Defense was accused of being a fascist. And you know what's funny? She didn't even try to deny it. In fact, she said she was proud to be a fascist. Wow. That's crazy. I'm telling you, that we should never have created Israel as a country. We should just let the Jews wander around a bit and just agree to the idea that we're not going to hurt them anymore. We're just going to let them wander around like the gypsies. Because look what giving them their own nation has created. It's created a monster. I mean, they're like 3 tick marks away from being declared a rogue nation if they keep doing shit like this. It doesn't matter how many excuses they make. Like good old Nancy Pelosi making excuses to reject perfectly reasonable bills. Yeah. Do I believe Israel or do I believe Syria? Both? It's entirely possible that there could be Iranian operatives operating through Syria, and the Syrian government just doesn't know about it. That it's a small enough number of people, and they sneak in stealthily enough that they could potentially go in almost completely unnoticed. It's entirely possible. But even if so, that doesn't matter, because the attack was aimed directly at an airport just outside of Damascus. A public airport, non-military. It was a civilian target. I mean, what the fuck, Israel? They had to end up setting up rockets and frickin' rocket launchers, automated rocket launchers to take down the damn planes. Yeah, the United States created Israel, and we shouldn't have. It was a bad idea. I mean, have you ever had one of those ideas like it sounded really great at the time, but then you put it into practice and it turned out it wasn't as great as you thought it was? Yeah, this is one of those times, I think. Wow. I don't got anything against the Jews in particular, but their government is one of the most violent and most evil institutions I have ever seen. And for our final story today, Queen Elizabeth has signed a bill that would ease the Brexit process. This could make it finally reality. In fact, the header of the article, like, it was slightly editorialized, so I de-editorialized a bit for you here. But they said that that it would make Brexit unstoppable. Oh no, it wouldn't be unstoppable. It still needs a vote. It still needs a further vote. Because the British voting system is unnecessarily complicated, from what I can tell. But this could make it finally a reality. So a strong possibility this would pretty much put policies into practice that would make Brexit entirely manageable without the loss of any major infrastructure given to them by the EU. It would basically translate EU laws into British laws, so you can have all the same stuff still. So essentially, Britain's trying to have their cake and eat it too. Yeah, I don't think this Brexit thing's really gonna work the way they think it's going to. They're just gonna have to do that hard Brexit and hope for the best. Of course, that's just my opinion. What do I know? I'm an ignorant, filthy American, right? Anyway, that's it for the Young Globalist today, folks. I'm out.